Chapter 61. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hodder was stunned. She saw that. That witch has some serious eyes, that he kept his face calm and thought, maybe they just look a little alike, if she really knows, Wanda's gonna blow my cover, Wanda might seem quiet, but that girl's sharp, You think so too, right? Wanda rested her chin on her fingers, giving Gwen the once-over, she moved pretty smooth back there, but anyone can do that, but Gwen was so calm, in her reaction time. Forget about it, she's right up there with Black Widow. Still, if she is Ghost Spider, some people might lose it. Wanda huffed, crossing her arms, almost popping a button in the process. She kept glancing at Hodder, she remembers me losing my mind when she wore that Ghost Spider suit, don't tell me it's just a coincidence. Maybe she is, Hodder let out a breath and smiled, trying to play it cool, sounds like Wanda's just got a little doubt in her head. Nothing set in stone, You're really dreaming, Wanda's face flushed. She gave Hodder's waist a hard pinch, what if he really is thinking about her like that, how are we supposed to get anywhere, I'm getting anxious about nothing, if something like that actually comes down, I'd be the one thrown away, every day, I'm getting more worried about him walking out on me, my life's been a rough ride. That's all there is to it, I just hope I can hold on to Hodder, if I have that, I'll never ask for anything else, You alright? Be careful, Gwen waved off the kid's mom and jogged over. What were you guys talking about, They were definitely gossiping, I just can't hear, Nothing, just figured out how to get Hood to cook us up something tasty, Wanda waved it off. Why bring it up now? I'd rather not, Then let's get back. I'm starving, I can't get enough of your food, Gwen bounced on her toes, can't wait to get another bite out of Hood's cooking, I'm only missing one thing with Wanda right beside us, at least I got that last time, and that's enough for me, You've had it before, Wanda frowned, how would Gwen know about Hood's cooking, Well, that day. I'd be telling her how I came over, had breakfast. She should know us, I mean, we're not dating, but you can see what's going on, Cough, cough. Hood's face went green. He cut her off fast. I told her I'm a master chef, Gwen was about to drop a bomb about coming downstairs. I can't let Wanda catch on, Yeah, Mr. Hood is great, Gwen nodded hard, it's the best stuff I've ever eaten, Oh. Wanda eyed Hodder, there's something off about that guy today, Alright. Hod helped load the bumblebee and yelled, let's go, back to the manor, and I would be the driver. Wait a second, if I drive, then the two of them would fight over the front, these girls can be a nightmare, Wanda, I'm beat, I'm gonna lie down in the back. You drive, nailed it, Sure. Wanda shrugged, yesterday was long and this morning, I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. It makes sense I'd be tired, he wants to chill, it's Gwen's turn for shotgun, Wanda slid into the driver's seat and pulled onto the road. Master, unreal. You just snagged another girl, out of the blue, the radio started blaring, why couldn't he keep his mouth shut, Bumblebee, zip it, Hodder hissed. He spun to Gwen. Don't worry, the car's a chatterbox. Master, you're a real smooth talker taking care of two at once. I knew you had it in you, Bumblebee just kept running his mouth. Was that the car talking, Gwen pointed to the console, a car can talk, Don't mind him, he's got a big mouth. Wanda was already used to it, yeah, Bumblebee is like that, Whoa, this car is insane, Gwen was impressed, I know about AI, but never knew cars could do that, Yup, this car is the best, Bumblebee ate up the compliment. Alright, Enough or you're getting locked up in the garage forever. Hodder couldn't let that loose cannon keep yapping. What's he going to come out with? She has to believe me or she'll suspect that there's something between me and her. Bumblebee quickly switched to the music station. Don't want to be in the garage. No way. They cruised out of the city, the tunes were playing, and they drove toward the manor. BRMM*. An engine screamed in the back. Two black bikes cut right past them. The engine roar echoed. The bike stuck next to the car. Two guys in tight black suits, helmets, were on each bike. The backseat guys went into their jackets and pulled out a pair of Scorpion SMGs. Click. Guns cocked. Don't move. Get out. The backseat guys yelled at the car. I'll take M. Wanda and Gwen shouted at the same time. You. Wanda stared at Gwen. Why would she say that? She's only a kid, and she's not even scared. Something's wrong. No need. Hodder was stone-faced. He glared at Gwen. You're good. Did she just forget she's not a superhero? If she steps up, it's all over. Right. Gwen remembered that she was just a college girl. Hood's got this. Those four never stood a chance. Did you hear? Out now, or we get rough. One of them fired a shot in the air. Bumblebee. Hodder frowned. Bam. The doors flew open, throwing the bikers off the road. The car's alive. Gwen lost it. I knew about AI, but this is next level. It's thinking for itself. I am a Cybertronian. Bumblebee's voice blasted. Yeah, I'm cool, I know. Okay, pipe down and go. Hodder snapped. He didn't check on the bikers. Just petty guys looking for some quick cash. This place is a free-for-all. People die. BRMM. Bumblebee launched ahead. He hit 125 miles an hour in under 2 seconds. Gwen was hyped, but she shouted like she was on a roller coaster. Up ahead, 2 cars blocked the road, with 6 guys with guns. Now we have something serious. Hodder frowned. Not a random holdup after all. They were expecting a crash. Stop. The road block guy yelled through a megaphone. The others aimed at Bumblebee. Boom. Bumblebee floored it. The engine screamed. Hod. Gwen's face turned white. Yeah, it's cool, but it doesn't mean I want to die. We hit those cars at 200, dead. CRRKK. Everything inside the car went topsy-turvy. Bumblebee morphed. The car changed. The front wheels became a machine gun. Did it. Everything spun in the car. The robot exploded right in there with us and flew into the air. There's been nothing left after the bullets landed on the 2 cars blocking the way. It transformed back to normal in midair before drifting a perfect U-turn and coming to a halt. Gwen's eyes were popping out. We were being protected at any time, as long as we got this guy. After all, it only took a split second. Wanda was used to this by now. One scare was enough. Some blind people want a piece of me. Hodder said. Bumblebee, park it. The car stopped, doors popped open. They're a team. Wanda frowned. It's just one whole setup. One's alive. Hodder walked toward a body on the ground. There was a guy there, lying on the ground with a hole ripped up in his midsection. He watched Hodder approach. The feeling of fear is beginning to spread now. He wants to go, but there's nothing left in his leg. Wanda kneeled and stared the man in his soul. Hydra. Wanda frowned. What's that? Gwen had never heard of it. Bad guys. Hodder watched the woods. Are they going for Wanda, or me? Probably Wanda. Wanda's been blowing their guys up. Shoot. Hodder frowned. From the woods is another 4. The force started blasting with bullets to the group of people. Gwen, move. Wanda yelled and shot out a wave. Gwen dodged the stream of bullets. Whoosh. Hodder shot dark red energy, stopping the bullets mid-air. Then, he used his thermal vision to destroy that force. Wanda, you good? Hod thought she was shocked. Yeah. Wanda stared at Gwen, that reaction time star. How can this ordinary, Chapter 62. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before they could even process what was happening, intense gunfire erupted from both sides of the woods. Bang, 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 bullets flew thick and fast. It felt like they were completely surrounded. Hood simply waved his hand, and fiery red energy materialized into a shimmering barrier. The bullets slammed into it, frozen in place. There are a lot of them. Gwen's expression turned serious. She could sense a large number of enemies positioned on either side of the woods. They were acting with tactical precision, rotating their ammo refills, and they were organized into squads of 6 or 7, specifically positioned throughout the forest, like they were hunting something. Do these cockroaches really think they can take us down with pea shooters like that? Hodder sighed, already annoyed. The Shura field was bad enough, and now these guys were actively trying to start something. He raised his right hand, and a fiery red vortex appeared in his palm. He hadn't really tapped into the fire element's power since he got it, and now seemed like a good time to let them feel some pain. The Phoenix's power was just too overwhelming. They'd be gone too fast. Hodder exhaled softly, and the flame transformed into a giant dragon, sweeping outwards. In an instant, Hodder became the eye of a massive fire tornado. Everything around them, except where Hodder and the girls stood, was engulfed in flames. The whole world was a raging inferno. Ack! Monster! It burns! Countless screams echoed from the surrounding woods. Hodder held back from unleashing the full heat. Instead, he wanted these Hydra goons to suffer the pain of being consumed by fire. The flames weren't just burning them, the intense heat was being inhaled, causing agony from the inside out. They were trapped in hell, writhing and screaming, but it was no use. Even trees and plants that weren't directly in the fire tornado were scorched and withered. Soon, many trees began to ignite. In just 30 seconds, the woods fell silent. Snap! Hodder slowly snapped his fingers. The raging flames instantly died out, leaving only charred trees emitting faint white smoke. Silence descended, broken only by the sound of collapsing trees. Gwen stared, her mouth slightly open, her eyes glazed over. She'd heard about Hodder's power, but seeing it up close was something else. Even though she was protected from the heat inside the fire tornado, she could still sense the enemy's agony, their bodies twisting and contorting in the flames. All gone. Hodder waved his hand, and the barrier vanished. The bullets that had been held in place rained down on the ground. The air reeked of burnt wood mixed with the stench of cooked meat. Gwen felt like she was going to be sick. She'd taken down plenty of enemies, but she'd never seen anything like this. Her stomach churned, like she was about to throw up stomach acid. She was, after all, just a college student. You okay? Wanda put a hand on Gwen's back, concerned. She wasn't showing much reaction, her heart filled only with disgust for Hydra. I'm fine. Gwen bent over and dry heaved a few times before straightening up, pale. She was proving to be surprisingly resilient. Wanda glanced around, paused, and said quietly, Hydra was probably after me. She wasn't entirely sure. Hydra members were often brainwashed, their memories fragmented. The clearest thing was the mission their superiors assigned. Reading the memory of one of the Hydra members, all he knew was that they were members of Hydra, and that their mission was to intercept and capture the 3 people in the car. You should tell Tony about this, Hodder said. If they're after you, then I shouldn't get involved. The Avengers should handle this. Okay. Wanda agreed, pulling out her phone to call Tony. What's up? Tony and the others had just arrived at Ross Wuching's house. They were surprised to see Wanda calling. She wouldn't call unless it was important. Hydra attacked me, Wanda said calmly. Tony's face darkened immediately. The captain and the others nearby overheard. They hadn't expected Hydra to target Wanda. Are you alright? Where are you? Tony demanded. I'm fine. I already took care of them, Wanda replied. Send me your location. I'll have S.H.I.E.L.D. handle it, Tony said, and hung up, but his dark eyes betrayed his mood. Hydra, huh? Messing with the wrong people, time to cut off all 9 of Hydra's heads. Meanwhile, in an underground base, in an office with beige walls. Report, a voice called from outside. A man in black combat gear hurried into the office. "Boss, the mission to capture Spider-Woman failed. Everyone we sent out was wiped out," he reported grimly. Bang. "What?" The man with a mechanical eye, sitting in a black leather chair, slammed his fist on the table, his face turning red. "They're a bunch of losers. 2 elite teams couldn't even catch a little girl." He'd carefully calculated the odds. Ghost Spider might be agile, but she wasn't invincible. His team was well organized, so there shouldn't have been any problems. Even if they suffered losses, it shouldn't have been this bad. According to our intel, Scarlet Witch was also there. The man lowered his head. "And there was another man there. His name is Hood. He's a shareholder in Stark Group." "Oh," the bald man frowned. "So, Scarlet Witch is hanging out with a Stark Group shareholder. Interesting." Scarlet Witch being there changed everything. 2 elite teams wouldn't stand a chance against her, but it didn't make sense that she wasn't with Tony and his crew. Instead, she was with a Stark Group shareholder. That was interesting. If Hood was there, he'd have recognized the man immediately. He was Baron Strucker, one of Hydra's top leaders. This wasn't his movie look, though. It was his comic book persona. Baron Strucker slowly stood up, stretching. He'd been upgraded from head to toe. His arms were made of silver metal, and his chest and back were covered in steel components. Even a slight movement caused a metallic grinding sound. "Boss, should we send more people to capture the Spider-Woman?" The man asked in a heavy voice. They'd analyzed the situation. Once they caught her alone, they could bring her back. "Not yet. Wait for the right moment for a second attempt." Baron Strucker approached the man and patted him on the shoulder with his steel arm. Though his voice was calm, the man trembled. Now that Scarlet Witch was involved, things had become complicated, and he definitely wasn't going to arrest her now. The situation had exceeded his expectations. "All right, get out of here," Baron Stark said calmly. "Yes." The man lowered his head and carefully left the office. "Heh heh." Baron Strucker turned with a slight sneer and sat back down. "Scarlet Witch? I'll get you sooner or later." He'd regretted letting her escape before. Time to rethink the plan to capture Scarlet Witch, and Tony and his crew were going to Wakanda soon. Maybe an opportunity would present itself. His heart raced at the thought. This was a wonderful experiment. He casually opened the wooden drawer on his right and pulled out a file. Experimental subject, Wanda Maximoff. He opened the file and stared at the photo. "Wait for me. You'll be back soon." His face contorted as he spoke. He stood up, file in hand, pressed a button on the wall, and a door behind him slowly opened. Inside was a room filled with iron shelves, and each shelf was covered in bottles and jars. The bottles and jars contained human tissues, mutated arms, slender tongues, even bottles filled with eyeballs. A chill emanated from the room. Even more terrifying were the glass jars containing strange-shaped heads. These were all test subjects. Some of the heads seemed alive, their open mouths screaming in agony. "Wanda, when will you be here, too?" Baron Stella held up a jar containing a skull, staring at it with wide eyes, his mouth nearly splitting his face. His eyes were filled with desire and twisted excitement. A harsh, hoarse laugh echoed in the dark room. S.H.I.E.L.D. took over the cleanup, and Hood returned to the manor with Gwen and Wanda. Ugh. Getting out of the car, Hodder stretched and sighed. Finally, back. Not much had actually happened, but Hodder felt drained. You had to take the bad with the good, Hydra. He wasn't worried about them. If they really ticked him off, he'd make time to swat them like bugs. "I'm gonna take a shower." Wanda rubbed her arms. The heat had made her sweaty. She hated the sticky feeling and couldn't wait to shower. "Okay." Hod nodded, grinning. "Go ahead. Dinner later." Wanda knew exactly what he meant. "Go cook." "Stop talking nonsense." Wanda swayed her hips and headed upstairs. She couldn't stand the sticky skin any longer. As Wanda went inside, Hood unloaded the groceries and walked toward the kitchen. "Gwen, you can relax on the sofa if you're tired," he added. "No, I want to watch." Gwen shook her head and hurried after him. She'd rather hang out with Hodder than sit around alone. "Trying to steal my secrets." Hodder quickly pinched her cheek. The softness made his heart melt. "Heh. Maybe." Gwen said, crossing her arms, enjoying him rubbing her face. She'd been thinking about Hodder's cooking for a long time. After eating his breakfast that time, it was all she could think about. Now she wanted to see if she could learn something. Then come on. If you can figure it out, I'll be impressed. Hood smiled and turned toward the kitchen. Does Wanda live here? Gwen asked suddenly. She noticed Wanda had headed upstairs. That meant Wanda probably lived at Hood's house. Hood paused but kept walking, saying, yeah, we've been through a lot together. She's like family. Oh. Gwen nodded quietly. She didn't think much of it, but she was a little jealous that Wanda got to live with Hood. Hood entered the kitchen and skillfully began to prepare the food. Gwen, unable to resist, hugged Hood from behind. Just then, a voice said, Hod. What are you doing? Chapter 63. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hod. Did you hear that? Get me some clothes. Wanda's voice drifted down from upstairs. Coming right up. Hodder relaxed a bit. He'd been so caught up in the moment, he hadn't even registered the noise from above. I'll bring Wanda some clothes, Hod said, gently squeezing Gwen's hand and patting her chest. Feeling the bullet in her hand, she felt much better. You know, the closer you get to the edge, the bigger the rush. Okay, Gwen replied reluctantly, stepping out of Hod's embrace. The lingering heat and the feel of his skin left her flushed, like she had a fever. The feeling of being close to him was addictive, the kind of connection she'd always craved. Looking up at Hod's handsome face, she couldn't resist one more quick kiss before taking a couple of steps back. Keep an eye on the food, make sure it doesn't burn. Hodder ruffled Gwen's hair, smiling. Got it. Gwen nodded, basking in the warmth of Hod's touch. Watching him go, she felt a pang of envy. Their relationship seemed so easy, so comfortable, like a real family. Wanda only had to say the word, and Hod was already on it, getting her clothes. If she could have that kind of connection with Hod someday, it would be amazing. Oops. Shoot. Gwen turned to see the food starting to burn and quickly grabbed a spatula to stir it. Still, thoughts swirled in her mind. Maybe it's time to plan a meeting with Hod, but was it too soon? Gwen felt a flash of anxiety, remembering her family's warnings. Still, the timing just didn't seem right. But if she could just confirm her feelings sooner, she could. Her face flushed, remembering their kiss. She instinctively touched her stomach. She knew now that what Hod was hiding wasn't a weapon. Ah! Gwen's daydream was interrupted by a soft cry from upstairs. The sudden sound startled her back to reality. She quickly turned off the stove and hurried towards the stairs. What's wrong? Gwen called out, worried. Had something happened? Scarlet Witch was powerful, but accidents could still happen. Nothing. Don't come up. I just saw a snake. Wanda's panicked breathing echoed from upstairs. There was fear in her voice, but something else too, a strange kind of excitement. She sounded weak, as if she was terrified. I'll help you catch it. Gwen called back quickly. She'd never been afraid of snakes, thanks to her quick reflexes. It was hard to believe that Scarlet Witch, of all people, was scared of snakes. She could take down entire armies. No. It's okay. Hod closed the door, so it won't get out. Wanda's voice was even more urgent, mixed with the sound of furniture being moved. Hey, Gwen, watch the food. I'll catch the snake and be right down. Hod called out. I saw it. Don't let it escape. Okay, be careful. Gwen shook her head, sighing to herself. Living way out here isn't always a picnic. She wasn't surprised that a snake had gotten into the house. Out here, there were always snakes and bugs. With Hod around, it wouldn't be a problem. He'd probably catch it in no time. It was probably for the best, so no one would get bitten and end up in the hospital. She wanted to help, but the door was closed upstairs. If the snake got loose, it would be bad. She went back to the kitchen and resumed watching the chicken, ribs, and ginseng soup simmering on the stove. It's taking a while, Gwen thought, stirring the soup absently. It's got to have been over an hour to catch a snake. Maybe even Mr. Hood can't do everything perfectly. Thinking about this, she felt a spark of excitement. If she moved in, she could take care of the snake problem. She wasn't afraid of snakes at all. Finally, she heard footsteps on the stairs. Gwen quickly put down the spoon and peeked out. Hod was smoothing his clothes as he came down, smiling. "Thanks for watching the stove." "It was nothing," Gwen replied, shaking her head. "Where's Wanda?" She was curious why Wanda hadn't come down with Hod. "Oh, she was just shaken up by the snake, so she's brushing her teeth to calm down." Hodder smiled strangely and walked past Gwen into the kitchen. As he passed, Gwen caught a whiff of the same laundry detergent as before. Mr. Hood must really like that particular scent. She was still confused why Wanda would brush her teeth to calm down. Guess everyone has their quirks. Just like how he likes to watch the sunset after a battle. Hod went back to the kitchen, saw the slightly burnt dish, and sighed. Guess one dish can't be perfect. Luckily, the other dishes were almost done. But he couldn't help it, he was starving. When people are hungry, they'll do anything. He lost control and didn't have time to come down to check the food. Since the other dishes were done, Hod quickly finished up and brought everything to the table. "Wow, beef Wellington, honey roast chicken, sizzling beef." Gwen gasped, watching Hod bring out one dish after another. The restaurant filled with delicious aromas. Tap, tap, tap. Gwen heard footsteps coming down the stairs. She turned to see Wanda slowly descending, leaning on her for support. Wanda's expression was strange. "Ms. Wanda, are you okay?" Gwen asked worriedly. Wanda was her idol, and she couldn't help but feel concerned. "I'm fine. I got spooked by the snake and twisted my ankle." Wanda gritted her teeth, her face flushed. She couldn't believe she was lying to such a sweet girl. She only had herself to blame for forgetting to grab her clothes. "I'll get you some medicine," Gwen offered quickly. Sprained ankles could be painful. They could swell and stay red for days. "No need." Wanda waved her hands, cheeks burning. "Hodder already took care of it. It's fine." "Oh." Gwen replied awkwardly. "What are you two talking about?" Hod called from inside. "Come eat. Everything's ready." "Okay, coming." The two walked into the dining room, greeted by the mouth-watering aroma. The table was piled high with dishes. Each one looked amazing, except for the one that was slightly burnt. "Wow, this looks incredible," Wanda exclaimed, eyes wide. It was a far cry from their previous breakfasts. Hod had kept those light, but this was vibrant, fragrant, and delicious. "Looks like you're hungry," Hod said with a grin, wiggling his eyebrows. He ladled creamy mushroom soup over the Russian sausage. "You are." Wanda pouted playfully. They sat down and started eating. "Gwen, try this beef Wellington. It's amazing," Wanda said, picking up a piece of crispy, tender beef Wellington and placing it in Gwen's bowl. "This yak meat is cooked perfectly. Try this too," Hod added, putting a bite-sized piece of meat into Gwen's bowl. Gwen felt a surge of warmth as the two of them kept filling her plate. They were so kind, so caring. She couldn't help but imagine how wonderful it would be if she could always be with them. "Mr. Hod, would you want to come to my house for dinner tomorrow?" Gwen asked, finally gathering her courage to look up at Hod. She wanted to take Hod back to meet her parents. If she didn't, they would never stop asking about it. Hod hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They finished their meal and slumped back in their chairs, stuffed. They'd eaten as much as they could, but there was still plenty left over. "That was amazing." Wanda sighed happily, face flushed from the food. It was the best meal she'd had in ages. The thought of eating like this regularly made her feel giddy. Especially the creamy mushroom soup, it made her face heat up. It seemed like she'd never go hungry with either of them. Ouch! Gwen suddenly noticed the clock and gasped. What's wrong? Hod asked, looking at Gwen in surprise. It's getting late. My parents will be worried. I have to go. Gwen said quickly. Ever since she told them she liked someone, they'd been extra strict. She needed to get back before she got grounded. Wanda, you rest up. I'll take Gwen home, Hod said to Wanda. Sure, go ahead. Wanda said with a small wave. She was too full to move. Just drop me at the bus station outside of town. Gwen suddenly remembered her parents being home. If he dropped her off, they would definitely see. So she asked Hod to take her to the suburbs, and then she could swing back through the spider silk. Okay, Hod agreed, since Wanda was right there, at the bus station outside of town. It was late, and the streets were deserted. I'm heading home, Gwen said reluctantly. She didn't want to leave, but if she didn't, George's father would probably call the police. I'll see you tomorrow. Hod said, ruffling her hair with a smile. Remember to come. Gwen begged, getting out of the car and glancing back every few steps. She had told Hod that she would go back wearing the spider suit. Since she basically wore the spider suit inside, she only needed to find a place to take off the coat. Yeah. Hod nodded and drove off. He had been holding back his anger just now, and now he was ready to go back and vent it. Watching the bumblebee's taillights disappear, Gwen found an alley to take off her coat. Hey there, little girl. All alone, a van slowly pulled over, and a bearded man leaned out and spoke. What's it to you, buddy? Gwen said, on alert the moment she saw the man. Her spider sense was tingling, warning her of danger. As she spoke, she subtly backed away. The man noticed. She's alone. At his command, the back doors of the van flew open. Several figures in gas masks and black tactical gear spilled out. Without a word, they raised their weapons and opened fire. Bang, bang, bang. Gwen reacted instantly, gracefully dodging to the right. The bullets whistled past her. Who are you? Gwen demanded, frowning. She was scared. If she hadn't been ready, she would have been hit. Ghost Spider, come with us. A woman's voice called from behind one of the masks. Hearing the words Ghost Spider, Gwen's face fell. I don't know what you're talking about. You must have the wrong person. Gwen protested. She couldn't believe they had recognized her. She'd been so careful to hide her identity. Bang, bang, bang. They didn't reply, but pulled the triggers again, weaving through the hail of bullets. Gwen used her spider sense to anticipate their movements. She fired webs, yanking the guns from two of the soldiers and tossing them aside. The weapons shattered against the wall. Execute Plan B. The soldier whose gun had been taken raised his hand calmly. Boom. The next second, a cloud of fog erupted from the van. In moments, it had spread out, enveloping the area. Oh no! Gwen thought as the fog reached her. As soon as she inhaled, she felt dizzy. Realizing how dangerous the situation was, Gwen turned to run. But after a few steps, she stumbled. The soldiers swarmed her. Gwen looked at them, trying to fight, but her body felt heavy and weak. She was kicked to the ground. Her last memory was of being dragged into the van by the soldiers. Chapter 64. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ugh. Ahem. Gwen's head throbbed, a brutal headache hammering at her skull. She blinked, disoriented, and found herself in a blindingly bright room. The room was stark white, encased in thick steel walls. The intense light made her squint. What the hell is this? The last thing Gwen remembered was being dragged into that van. Now she was here. Click, star, the door hissed open. A woman with sandy blonde hair glided in. Finally awake, the woman approached Gwen, who was sprawled on the floor, and sized her up. Where am I? Gwen asked, gritting her teeth against the pain. She didn't recognize this woman. Not even a little. but the other woman seemed prepared to target her, hence the gas mask. This was personal. "Where are you?" The woman spread her arms, a bright, almost mocking smile on her face. "This is an underground prison. Escape is a pipe dream." That her face was playful, but her words were chilling. No one ever walked out of this place, at least, no one ever had. "You guys." Gwen's mind raced. "Are you with Hydra?" That she'd tangled with Hydra just yesterday, then been ambushed tonight, and they'd specifically asked if she was alone before the attack. They knew Wanda would have been a problem, that's why they jumped her as soon as she was alone, planning it all out. Maybe Wanda wasn't the target after all. If they knew Wanda was around, they wouldn't have sent those scrubs, and Hood. Forget it. They would never provoke him if they knew how strong he was. Those goons were just barely enough to handle her, meaning she was the target. "You're sharp, I'll give you that," the woman purred, her lips curving into a nasty smile. She crouched down and tilted Gwen's chin up with a long, pale finger. "You're quite a looker." Even she had to admit, Gwen was stunning. And young. She considered herself beautiful, but Gwen was something else. "Are you sure you want to do this? Hood finds out, he'll come for you." Gwen spat, locking her gaze on the woman's brown eyes. She knew Hood would rescue her, he'd rain hellfire on these people. "Ha!" The woman's laugh tinkled like ice. "You're kidding, right? Some two-bit shareholder at Stark. Please." They'd already dug into Hood's background. He was a small-time investor, no amount of money would let him stand a chance against Hydra. They weren't afraid of Stark, or even Tony. "You." Gwen glared, the woman's arrogance igniting her anger. They were underestimating Hood. They would pay for that. "Save your breath. You've got a project coming up." The woman chuckled, a cruel glint in her eyes. This was a waste of time. "Ghost spider?" "Nothing more than a lab rat, asterisk whoosh, star. A rush of air, asterisk bang, star." Gwen braced herself with one hand and swung a punch with the other. She wasn't just going to stand here and chat. When the woman came in, she'd left the door open. If she was careful, she might be able to break free. "Son of a." The woman raised her arms to block the punch at the last second. The force of the blow knocked her back several steps, and she nearly went down. "Damn, you're strong." The woman hissed. That punch hit her like a freight train. She thought her arm might be broken. As Gwen pushed off the ground, she felt the chain clamped to her right ankle. "Crap!" Gwen threw her weight behind a kick, trying to snap the chain, asterisk bang, star. The chain rattled against the wall, but to Gwen's shock, it held. She could easily kick a car over. "Idiot, you really thought you could get away?" The woman rubbed her arm, spitting out the words while wincing in pain. She'd been too cocky. She never thought Gwen would fight back so soon, asterisk bang, star. Asterisk bang, star. Gwen ignored her, hammering at the chain. The woman was still off balance. This might be her chance, asterisk zzzzzzzzzzzzzzz, star. Suddenly, the wall behind the chain crackled with electricity. That a jolt ripped through Gwen, throwing her to the floor. If she wasn't so tough, the electricity would have knocked her out cold. Her muscles seized and her face went white. "You've been dosed with a mental toxin. Don't even bother trying to fight it. The harder you push, the worse it gets." The woman strolled up to Gwen and stroked her cheek with a sneer. "Okay, sweet dreams." Then, she sashayed out of the room, clicking along in her heels. The woman pulled out a black hair tie, yanked her hair into a ponytail, and strolled into an office. Inside, Baron Strucker was watching the security feed on the wall. "Yelena, how's our guest?" he asked without turning around. "Just a little feisty." Like a caged bird, Yelena replied, her face sharp under the fluorescent lights. Agent to the core, she was both beautiful and dangerous. Every detail was perfect, even the subtle curve of her lips hinted at secrets and seduction. "Heh." Strucker leaned back in his chair, finally turning to face Yelena. "That won't last." He'd broken tougher people than her. With the right chemicals, anyone could be made compliant. Besides, she was just a kid. Superpowers or not, she was still a rookie. So, when does the experiment start? Yelena asked, strolling over to the sofa and propping her long legs on the coffee table. She leaned back, showing off her figure. She was curious how tough Ghost Spider would be once they started poking around inside her head. Soon. The materials should be here tomorrow, Strucker said, resting his chin on his hand, his gaze lingering on Yelena. I'll handle it personally. She was definitely a stunner, but Strucker knew all about Yelena's past. She was a venomous beauty, full of temptation. You didn't mess with her unless you wanted to get stung, but that didn't stop him from admiring her. Good. Yelena nodded, her tone turning serious. I still don't like this Hood guy. I don't trust that Stark shareholder. He could be a problem. She trusted her gut, and her gut was telling her Hood was more than he seemed. He had too many connections. How did a nobody like him get so close to Tony, Wanda, and Ghost Spider? He had to be more than just rich. Ghost Spider wouldn't trust him otherwise, and the Avengers certainly weren't fools. Relax. Strucker waved her off, swiveling back to the keyboard. This is what we need to be worried about. He hit enter, and a picture flashed on the screen beside him. It was the live feed from Gwilyn Beach. Mysterious figure had torn a wizard apart with some kind of destructive energy. Yelena stared at the screen, speechless. The fear crawled up her spine. This wasn't just strength. This was something else entirely. A power that shouldn't exist. He controlled beings that weren't even human. She'd seen a lot, but never anything like this. He could shatter mountains and drain oceans. Is that even human? Yelena whispered, her eyes wide with dread. That's who we need to focus on, Strucker said grimly. He's the real threat. Find out who he is. Now. The Avengers were dangerous, but manageable. This guy was a whole new level of scary. They needed to know everything about him. Everyone had a weakness, and if they could somehow get their hands on him, the breakthroughs would be revolutionary. Got it. I'm on it. Yelena took a deep breath, slowly straightening. Boss, I'm out. As Yelena turned to leave, Strucker's voice stopped her. Yelena, how long have you been working for me? Strucker asked, looking up at her. A little over 3 years. Yelena paused, considering the question. Okay. Strucker's face softened with nostalgia. That's all. New York City, same as always. The autumn breeze rustled through the streets, hinting at winter. The leaves were turning yellow and falling to the ground. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Gotta bring something nice for the first impression, Hood muttered, grabbing a bottle of expensive wine from the rack. He added some jewelry he'd received as gifts to the car. He remembered Gwen's instructions. Today was the day he met her parents. He knew she was setting him up, but he was still nervous. At least Wanda was supposed to come with him, but she'd been swamped at the base and had to cancel. When are we leaving? Hood muttered, leaning against Bumblebee. He scrolled through his phone, frowning. He'd messaged Gwen, but she hadn't replied, and her phone was off. Is she napping? Hood shook his head. No one in this city took naps. He finally started the car, guessing Gwen was cooking. If she was, she might not have seen his message. He might as well just head over there. In Queens, Hood cruised the Bumblebee down Gwen Street. Hey, is George Stacy home? He parked and noticed a police car parked down the street. He'd heard George Stacy was back on the force after recovering from his injuries. He didn't expect him to be off work so early. As a decorated officer, George could walk back in and get back his deputy chief position, but he was usually an overtime maniac. The shift change wasn't until 6 p.m. Whatever, I'll just head upstairs. Hood shrugged, guessing George was home early because he knew Hood was coming. He grabbed the gifts from the trunk and headed for the house. As he climbed the stairs, Hood heard sobbing. Gwen's door was ajar, and 2 officers were taking statements from George Stacy and his wife. Hey, I'm a friend of Gwen's. What's going on? Hood asked, setting the gifts down. My daughter's missing. She didn't come home last night, Helen choked out, her voice breaking with sobs. You're her friend. Can you help us get in touch with her? Gwen was always responsible. She never stayed out without telling them. And even if she was late, she always showed up the next day. Now she's missing, and her phone is off. Hood's face hardened, a terrible thought forming in his mind. Don't worry. I'll find Gwen. I promise, Hood said, his voice low. George and Helen looked up, surprised by his certainty. He was dead serious. Hood stepped back into the hallway. He knew who had taken her. It wasn't Wanda, it was Gwen. Red Queen. Track Gwen's location, Hood said, his voice icy. Owner, Gwen is currently in Lodz, Poland. Chapter 65. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thick snow had been pushed to the sides of the road, and snowflakes still danced in the air. Poznansky-style houses lined the streets, their pointed roofs draped in white. Red Queen, you sure this is the place? A flash of gold marked his entrance. A figure in brown sunglasses stepped onto the street, his gaze sweeping the area. It was Hod. Affirmative, Master. Camera records indicate Gwen's last confirmed location is here. A miniature figure in red appeared in the lenses of the sunglasses. It was Red Queen, a little girl rendered in light. She then projected a probable route from Gwen's last known position. Looks like Hydra's been backed into a corner. Hiding out in these backwater towns, Hod observed, cracking his neck. The Insight Project's failure had splintered Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. The organization had been struggling ever since. Master, should I analyze the possible escape routes? Red Queen asked. She could correlate online data with her own analyses. Hold off. Let's grab some coffee first. Hod put his hands in his pockets and headed for a nearby cafe, a hint of curiosity softening his cold demeanor. The aroma of fresh coffee beans hit him as he opened the door. Inside, locals had shed their heavy coats and were relaxing in the warm interior. Hood's presence drew their attention. His black hair and eyes marked him as an outsider. Foreigners weren't common in these parts, so his arrival was a source of curiosity. Cappuccino and a sandwich, please. Hod casually tossed a large US dollar bill onto the bar. This casual show of wealth made eyes widen. A generous spender, especially a yellow man, was a rare sight. His handsome features didn't go unnoticed either, with several girls discreetly snapping photos. Hod ignored the attention, taking it in stride. He'd traveled enough to be used to it. Coffee ordered, he settled at a table near the window, his gaze fixed on the snowy landscape. A touch of indifference lined his features. Excuse me, sir. A slender woman entered with a feline grace. Her arrival caused a stir among the patrons. She was striking. Hey, beautiful, come sit with me. Care to join me for a coffee, darling? Check me out, girl, I'm loaded. She ignored the catcalls and approached Hod's table, stopping opposite him. Her blonde hair framed a body sculpted for sin. Even the other customers couldn't take their eyes off her. Something I can help you with? Hod asked, his voice calm, his eyes cold. Where are you from? You look troubled. Yelena placed her purse on the table. She looked stunning in her business attire, as she exuded a musky scent of perfume. She was definitely trying to seduce him. China, Hod replied flatly, sizing her up. He'd noticed her the moment she walked in. This girl had definitely had work done. She was probably Natasha's sister, the Black Widow. He'd chosen this cafe specifically, betting she'd follow him. He had a gut feeling. His hunch proved correct. She'd come right in. Why was she here? Was she working for Hydra? This was Hydra territory, which was a possibility. No, that didn't feel right. More likely, she was undercover. Chinese? You don't look it. Yelena rested her cheek on her hand, toying with the fingers of her right hand. Her fingers were now placed gently on Hod's hand. She did so as Hod was observing her. Her every move was extremely tempting, and even her index finger was lightly caressing Hood's palm. The move had worked on many men. Many could never resist the temptation. She was very familiar with her strengths, her looks, and her physique. If you have something to say, just spit it out. Hod withdrew his hand, his voice even, and unaffected. He enjoyed women, but he understood the importance of discretion. I'm Belova. I teach yoga. Yelena purred, batting her eyelashes and biting her lip. She thought Hood was only playing it cool. Sorry, I'm not interested, Hod said, standing up. He suddenly knew what he had to do, and it was best to leave Yelena where she was. Yelena blinked, surprised. A smile tugged at the corner of her lips. This was more interesting than she'd expected. Yelena, what's the situation? A voice crackled in her earpiece. This one's a little different, Yelena replied, her tone playful. He intrigued her. He seemed genuinely uninterested. She had been testing him, but Hood had not reacted at all. She also found out that it was impossible to see him coming, even with their installed cameras. Keep tabs on him. Find out why he's in Lodz. The voice commanded. You got it. I'll find out what he's up to. Yelena was eager to uncover his secrets. In his office, Baron Strucker hung up the phone. He leaned back in his chair, twirling a pendant made of bones. Does she need backup? His subordinate asked. Let her handle it, Strucker scoffed. He's just a small fish. We can't waste resources. Interfering could disrupt Yelena's plans. Better to let her run the show. He was more curious about why the guy had shown up. If he wasn't, he'd have had him killed. Are the materials ready? Strucker asked, now focused on the real issue. Everything set, his men replied. Good. Let's get the experiments ready for Ghost Spider. Strucker's smile turned cruel. He was excited to learn Gwen's secrets. Yes, sir. The subordinate left the office. How does the power of a spider fit into your body? Ghost Spider. Strucker muttered, his eyes gleaming with greed. If he could unravel the mystery, he could turn his men into Spider-Men. The Avengers would stand no chance. Master, she's Yelena Belova, a top agent from the Red Room, Red Queen reported as soon as they were out of the cafe. She's been undercover in Hydra for 3 years. She's likely connected to Gwen. Not too far off from what I expected, Hod confirmed. He'd suspected as much. Now, he had to move. While it was possible to find Gwen through force, it could put Gwen in danger. Hod walked to the hotel he'd booked, got his key, and took the elevator up. As soon as he opened the door, a figure lunged from behind, silent and deadly. Hod grabbed her hands, pinning her against the wall, as his left foot kicked the door shut. Even if you can't help yourself, there's no need to come up here. You need lessons in ergonomics, he said, his voice amused. It was Yelena. You knew? Yelena asked, stunned. Now she understood. He'd known all along. I could smell your perfume from 8 blocks away. Hod looked her up and down, without restraint. He was not thinking of her seductiveness, his attention was on Gwen. Since you know, you're here for Gwen. Yelena was ready to surrender. Seems the agent aren't stupid. Hod drew closer, his breath ghosting across Yelena's face. He didn't have time for games. Need to use some torture first. Yelena arched an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Then she hooked her legs towards Hod. Yelena, the Red Room sent you here to rescue people, right? Yelena's eyes widened. It was the Red Room's most closely guarded secret. Tell me where Gwen is. Hod released her and sat on the sofa. Yelena took a deep breath. Gwen's with Strucker, in his lab, inside Ross. Since he knew her secret, he wasn't an enemy. Want to leave this all behind? I know about Strucker. I can help you take him down. Hod shot back. You're strong, Yelena replied. But Strucker isn't just powerful. He's been experimented on, transformed. He's not human anymore. You can't get to him. Hod raised his hand and blasted a bronze statue in the room into dust. You. Yelena gasped, shocked. Then, after a moment, she spoke. There's a basement in Lodz, a passage to the underground lab. Her words rang true, with no doubt to the strength of the man in front of her. Hod opened a portal, a golden passage shimmering into existence. He grabbed Yelena, pulling her through into the hidden lab. Chapter 66. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stepping through the light-filled portal, Yelena was stunned by what she saw. She'd witnessed Hood's power, but this was beyond anything she imagined. This wasn't just a mutation, it was a new kind of power. She finally understood how Hood had appeared so suddenly. He'd used this method to come directly to Lod City. "Are you a mutant?" Yelena asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't believe such a powerful person wasn't in the Red Room's files. What had just happened was insane, being teleported. If it was a statue, maybe, but she had been taken deep into the laboratory, and it happened in seconds. It was like he knew exactly where she was. Nope. Hood didn't explain, but checked out the passage. It sloped downwards, and from the looks of it, it was for emergencies. It wasn't very big, but it was old. "This is the passage to the underground lab." Hood turned to Yelena. "Yeah, it's a back door. There's also an elevator." Yelena nodded, giving him the intel. Hardly anyone used this passage. "Let's go." Hood moved his wrist, stepped forward, and headed down. He could already feel the suffering of countless beings below. He knew Hydra was doing some messed up research down there. They probably targeted Gwen because of her spider gene. That gene was crazy powerful. Even Captain America would have trouble against it. He just couldn't believe Hydra knew Gwen's real identity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let her go back alone. "Wait. Hold on." Seeing Hood head down with his hands in his pockets, Yelena freaked. "If you just waltz in, Strucker's people will see you." It would be too obvious. If they saw him, they'd be ready. Plus, her cover would be blown. Hood might be powerful, but Strucker wasn't an idiot. This base had been here forever. It had defenses. Even the Avengers might not get through unscathed. Hood was alone. If they found him, it would be a disaster. "Relax." Hood ignored her and waved at the monitor. "Hey, you guys are gonna have a bad day." "What are you doing?" Yelena was shocked. She thought Hood would be subtle. She was supposed to get him in undercover. If he cooperated, they could get in safe and take down Strucker fast. It was the safest, smartest way to do it, and avoid a fight, but Hood wasn't thinking about any of that. He was just barging in, hoping they knew he was coming. He was a madman, not caring about his life. Just trying to save some time. Hood shrugged, looking innocent. He didn't want to waste time. Hydra was nothing. He could wipe them out in a day. This was just one branch. Even if these rats in the sewers came out, they wouldn't be tough. If they knew he was coming, they'd gather their forces and he could nail them all at once. If Gwen wasn't down there, he'd take them out above ground. In the monitoring room, the person in charge spotted Hood's face and hit the alarm. The Hydra security team rushed out, surrounding the passage from both ends. "Oh," Hood put his hands in his pockets, looking at the Hydra guys. "Looks like Hydra's been recruiting a lot of losers lately." This organization had even infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. "Yelena, who is this guy? What are you doing?" One of the soldiers recognized Yelena and pointed his weapon at her. He didn't know how Hood got there, but Yelena was probably involved. "This has nothing to do with me. I'm a hostage." Yelena threw her hands up, pretending to be innocent. If Hood wanted to die, he wasn't taking her with him. She'd almost gotten close to Strucker. She didn't want to screw up the mission and get killed. She threw Hood under the bus. Even if she had to explain later, she could convince them she was innocent. "You're lying," the soldier yelled, his expression cold. "Kill them." "Wait, did you hear me?" Yelena's eyes widened. They were going to kill her too. She was a Hydra big shot. The soldiers opened fire, aiming at the two of them. They crouched slightly to avoid hitting each other. Their tactical level was high. Boring. Hood snapped his fingers. A wave of red energy spread like a bubble. It surrounded Yelena and him. When the bullets hit the barrier, they turned to dust. "What the heck is that?" Yelena's eyes almost popped out. How did he do that? Dozens of bullets, blocked that easily. She'd imagined her and Hood dying, but this was crazy. "Keep shooting." The soldiers kept firing, but the bullets couldn't get through the barrier. "Just die, you're all dirty rats." Hood raised his right hand, his eyes cold. As he clenched his fist, the soldiers stopped shooting. Fear washed over them. Their helmets started to shrink, like they were being crushed. They screamed, grabbing their heads, but it didn't stop the pain. Smash. Their heads exploded, blood splattered on the wall, tick-tick, the blood dripped to the ground was covered in blood, and the air was thick with the smell, horror and weirdness. The scene was bloody and terrifying. Yelena stared, stunned. She looked behind her, and the passage was the same. The soldiers' heads were gone, and you could see broken bones everywhere. Pink brain tissue mixed with blood dripped down the slope. Yelena could only hear her own heartbeat. This is a demon. Yelena stared at Hood. She felt only fear. It was a fear that went deep. She swallowed. She'd never heard of anyone so powerful. It was like he'd appeared out of nowhere. Let's go. Hood took a step, stepping on the red carpet of blood. And clean up these pests. Meanwhile, in the lab, Gwen was trapped in a steel cage. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Gwen pulled at the chain, veins popped on her neck, and her eyes were bloodshot. She couldn't break the chain. Stop struggling, kid. You can't escape. Strucker smiled, standing behind the glass. Let me out, Gwen yelled. The harder she tried, the weaker she felt. She wouldn't give up. Strucker licked his lips and pressed a button. The chain trapping Gwen snapped open. Gwen's eyes lit up. She was weak, but she could move without the chain. She could break the glass and take down the leader. She jumped and kicked the glass, bang. But it was like kicking a steel wall. Ouch! Gwen fell, her whole body throbbing. The toxins were spreading through her body. You're too naive. Strucker put on a white coat, mocking her. This is vibranium. Even the Hulk can't break it. He was confident because of the vibranium. No one could get out of the lab. Vibranium? Isn't that stuff gone? Gwen was shocked. She thought the vibranium was used up. Why did Hydra have it? She couldn't believe they had something so rare, and they used it to make glass. Her teacher had said the vibranium was almost gone. Don't struggle. Strucker put on gloves and laughed. Just accept your fate. He released her ankle to watch her struggle. He enjoyed seeing her in pain and despair. Strucker's smile became perverted, and he took out a scalpel. I'll make you the most perfect work of art. Click. The wall behind Strucker opened, revealing bottles and jars. They were filled with organs, twisted faces, and mutated limbs. Gwen paled. She knew what was coming. The toxins were released, surrounding the lab. Strucker's mouth almost touched his ears. He couldn't wait to start. Madman. Gwen covered her mouth and nose, trying to resist. She felt her body weaken and her head spin. Who could save her? She didn't want to end up in a jar. In her mind, she saw Hood. If only he could come. Bang. There was a loud crash above the lab. What's going on? Strucker yelled, looking serious. He was interrupted. Boss, we have intruders. His subordinate rushed in. Damn it. Strucker turned off the fog, yelling. Who's got a death wish? Cough, cough. Gwen felt hope. Who was it? She thought of Hood. Only he could come. This guy. Strucker turned on the screen. He saw a familiar face standing on a pile of bodies. Strucker's face darkened. It's that Stark shareholder. Hood. Gwen's eyes widened, and tears ran down her cheeks. Hood had come to save her. Don't get your hopes up, kid. Strucker sneered. You might end up in a jar. He didn't take Hood seriously. He'd taken out some soldiers, but they were trash. I'll get him. Bang. As Strucker spoke, the door was kicked open. Hood stared at Strucker, put his hands in his pockets, and walked in. Looking for me? Chapter 67. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hod. Gwen's vision cleared, and a huge weight lifted from her chest. With Hod here, she was safe. Even with her vision blurred, she'd never forget his voice and shadowy figure. Hod entered the lab and saw Gwen, weak and in pain. He couldn't imagine what she'd endured locked up here. A flicker of rage crossed his usually calm eyes. You've got a death wish. Hod looked up, his gaze icy. Ha! Didn't think you'd be dumb enough to walk into a trap. Stark's eyes gleamed with mockery. This isn't America. The Stark group can't touch us here. So what if he breached the defenses? His power was the real security in this base. Those your last words? Hod's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Without waiting for Stark to reply, he vanished. His speed was incredible, creating a sonic boom. He seemed to materialize right in front of Stark. The force of his speed created a powerful gust of wind. What the? Strucker's pupils shrank. This speed surpassed even Quicksilver. Hod's burst of speed crushed Quicksilver's completely. Before Strucker could react, a hand slammed into his face. Bang! Strucker flew like a missile, slamming into the wall. The force embedded him in the supposedly indestructible wall. Hod ignored Strucker and strode to the door, channeling the Phoenix Force. He shattered the barrier into harmless black particles. Even though Strucker had shut off the neurotoxin when he detected the intruder, a mist of poison still lingered in the room. With a wave of his hand, the mist vanished. Gwen, it's okay. I'm here. Hod picked her up, a green light emanating from his hand. The horse spell quickly purged the toxins from Gwen's body, but she still looked weak. The neurotoxin had left her mentally exhausted. Thanks. Her voice was a mere whisper, her body limp. Seeing Hod, her fear evaporated. She had dreaded becoming a science experiment, but now she didn't have to worry anymore. Rest now. I'll get you your revenge. Hod cocooned Gwen in the Phoenix Force for protection, then turned to Stark, who was struggling to climb out of the wall. Ready to face your worst nightmare? His voice was calm, but his rage was unmistakable. He'd never felt anger like this before, and it was consuming him. Damn you. Think you can take me that easy? Stark gritted his teeth and pushed himself up against the wall. If he hadn't been enhanced, that blow would have turned him into paste. Even so, he was seriously injured. Clenching his fists, he took a deep breath. Come out, my warriors. In the southwest corner, among a pile of specimens, a row of stasis pods hissed open. Preservative fluid flooded the floor. The warriors inside opened their eyes. They were shirtless, revealing perfect, sculpted musculature. These soldiers were bred for combat. They were physically superior and possessed expert fighting skills. My best fighters. Rip that bastard to shreds. Strucker glared at Hod, a savage look in his eyes. He wanted to strap him down to an operating table more than anything. He'd never been pushed this far before. Yelena gasped as they emerged from their pods. She realized Strucker had been holding back. One look told her who they were. Hod, watch out. Those are Winter Soldiers. Any one of them can give Captain America a run for his money. Her voice trembled as she warned him. She was grateful she hadn't tried to attack Strucker. Even if she had succeeded, she'd never be able to face these monsters. She was just an agent, quick and agile, but they were something else entirely. These Winter Soldiers were a new breed. Strucker had been experimenting on ways to enhance his own soldiers. That's why he'd been kidnapping enhanced individuals from all over the world. Yelena. Whose side are you on, you traitorous bitch? Stark finally understood that Yelena had betrayed him. He had been suspicious of her when she tagged along. Now it made sense. She was a mole. Definitely not yours. Yelena shrugged, a sneer on her face. The cat was out of the bag. There was no way she could continue her mission now. Might as well show her cards. Fine, Stark roared. Kill them both. He wouldn't hold back anymore. He'd suspected Yelena all along, but she was so useful, he never let her go until now. As he finished speaking, the ceiling exploded. A massive black shape crashed down. It was a humanoid bat, covered in needle-like bristles. It was like a black cloud as it dove straight for Hod. Its wings beat with a piercing shriek. Jesus! Yelena clutched her ears. He turned people into monsters. The sound seemed to reach into her soul. She trembled. Stark was truly evil. The more she learned about him, the more she felt he was completely inhuman. Rest easy. You're better off dead than living like that. Hod shook his head, his eyes flashing red. An invisible force slammed into the bat. It exploded into a shower of blood that turned into black particles in midair. It's time to cleanse this evil from the world. Hood's eyes were cold. This guy had killed countless people. He could feel that the Winter Soldiers and the bat had lost their wills, like puppets, forced to obey Strucker's every whim. A fiery aura seemed to flicker in Hod's pupils. An oppressive crimson light flared around him as the Phoenix Force filled the room. a deafening hum filled their ears, the terrifying power concentrated in a confined space, an indescribable sense of dread filled Yelena. She collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. She realized Hod wasn't targeting her, this was just the raw output of his power. Even so, it was almost unbearable. The air vibrated, creating visible ripples. As the Phoenix Force spread, the underground lab shook. It felt like an earthquake. The supposedly indestructible steel walls cracked under the pressure, everything warped and twisted under the influence of his power. What's happening? This power, Strucker felt the immense pressure, and his face twisted in a grimace. Fear, awe, and longing warred within him. This was the power he craved most. But it wasn't his. Strucker even heard the modified parts of his body groaning. They were made with vibranium, but they were failing under the strain of Hod's power. The Winter Soldiers finally stirred. They were puppets without a sense of fear. Bang! They charged at Hod in perfect synchronization. Each soldier had a specific role, and once they got close, they would unleash a devastating attack. But as they ran, they seemed to enter an area of thick, viscous air. Their movements slowed, their bodies turning into black particles from the ground up. Everything in the lab was changing. Anything touched by the Phoenix Force turned to dust, the lab filled with black particles, like a thick fog. You're the mystery man. Stark stared at the power, his eyes wide. He remembered the scene from the broadcast. Back then, everything around him had been dissolving. That kind of power had only appeared at Gwilyn Beach. He never expected to see it in a shareholder of Stark Group. Now he understood why Hod knew Wanda and Ghost Spider. Mystery man. Yelena hadn't considered that. She was stunned by Stark's words. To her, this was the most terrifying power in the world, and the person who possessed it was standing right next to her. She secretly counted her blessings. Good thing I didn't cross him, that the consequences would have been disastrous. This power could make anyone disappear. Just witnessing it was terrifying. If you died this way, not even your body would be left behind. Wait! Stark threw up his hands and fell to his knees on the steel floor. Let me go. I'll give you anything you want. That he knew he was no match for Hod. This power dissolved everything, even vibranium. He might be strong, but he couldn't stand against this. Facing Hod's icy gaze, he pleaded, his voice trembling. I have incredible scientific knowledge, a lot of money, and countless connections. His mind raced, listing his advantages and assets. Even if he wasn't as strong as Hod, he was a brilliant researcher. He could continue the Winter Soldier project, even though it was expensive. That wasn't a problem, and he had connections everywhere. He could make Hod a world-famous celebrity tomorrow if he wanted. Finished your pathetic speech. Hod's eyes were filled with disgust. Money, power, strength. He already had it all, and Stark had crossed the line when he kidnapped Gwen. All he wanted was for this bastard to die a slow and painful death. Black particles began to swirl around Stark. The steel floor dissolved beneath him. In an instant, a hole appeared, revealing a pit of molten lava. Stark fell, grasping at the edge. Lava splashed, searing his body. The steel of his suit melted, the heat burned, eating through his mechanical enhancements and into his flesh. No. The pain brought tears and snot streaming down his face, which dried instantly in the heat. I can't die. I have so much more to do. His eyes widened in terror. Figures were rising from the specimen room. Broken bodies, dragging their mangled limbs, stumbled toward him. A roar echoed like it came from the depths of hell. They were reaching, clawing, trying to tear Stark to pieces. Stark, these are the souls you killed. Enjoy their company. Hod glared at Stark, scooped up Gwen, and walked away. No. Save me. I don't want to die. An endless horde of tormented souls dragged Strucker into the lava, tearing at his flesh. They unleashed their wrath and pain. Strucker's armor turned to fragments. The souls devoured his flesh and blood. Strucker's screams echoed through the laboratory until the door sealed shut. Chapter 68. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Whoosh, whoosh. Yelena, back on solid ground, gasped for air. It felt like something had been crushing her lungs, making it hard to breathe. The power she'd witnessed was terrifying, and even looking at Hod made her uneasy. Was that some kind of spell you cast? Yelena asked Hod, her voice laced with fear. Even using respectful language, this kind of power defied everything she knew. She'd heard whispers of mystics who could cast spells, but they were just legends. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would have dismissed it as a fairy tale. "What's it to you?" Hod glanced at Yelena, unmoved by her misery. Her chest rising and falling was mildly interesting. Perhaps, in his anger, he had tapped into the magic within the scroll of Sithorn. If he wanted Stark to suffer, the perfect revenge was to let his past actions be his undoing and to awaken the souls Stark had slaughtered, giving them a moment to wreak havoc. Those vengeful souls would tear Stark to shreds, devouring him completely. He only regretted that Gwen's presence prevented him from inflicting an eternity of pain on Stark. Hod didn't consider himself a good person, just someone who had no desire for power or fame. Cough, cough. Gwen coughed in his arms, her long lashes fluttering. Though the spell had purged the toxins from her body, the memories of fear lingered. Exhausted from it all, Hod was careful to protect her during the fight. "The toxin she was exposed to is a neurotoxin," Yelena explained, a hint of apology in her voice. "It'll take time to dissipate. Her recovery may be faster if she's strong." She felt responsible since she had brought Gwen here. Seeing the concern in Hod's eyes, she felt the need to explain. Neurotoxin production was expensive, and this was a version designed specifically to target individuals like Gwen. It dulled the brain's control over the body, so that while the body retained its strength, the brain couldn't command it effectively. "It's all right, she's fine now." Hod, focused on the weak, vulnerable Gwen in his arms, answered without looking up. The spell's primary effect was to eliminate external injuries and toxins. Yelena noticed that Gwen's cheeks already had a healthy color. She remembered a green light flashing on Hod's wrist when he picked Gwen up in the lab. "You really are a mystic," Yelena exclaimed, eyes wide. She'd witnessed enough experiments to understand the effects of the toxin. Gwen's rapid improvement suggested that magic was real. There was no other way to explain the neurotoxin's effects disappearing so rapidly, when time was the only known cure. "Quiet, don't disturb Gwen," Hod frowned, glaring at Yelena. Gwen needed rest. Yelena immediately clammed up. She'd witnessed Hod's power, and she didn't want to risk angering him. "Ugh." Gwen's eyes fluttered open. She was met with the face she'd been dreaming of. She felt the comforting warmth of Hod's chest. It was a sense of security she'd never known before. Subconsciously, she nestled her head against his shoulder. "How are you feeling?" Hod asked softly, concern etched on his face. He couldn't imagine the fear Gwen must have felt. After all, she was just a college student. Just because she was committed to helping others didn't mean she wasn't afraid. "I feel better." Gwen nodded, her lips curving into a soft smile. Her cheeks flushed. She realized she was becoming dependent on Hod. His strong chest felt like the safest place in the world. Even though her body was recovering, she didn't want to leave his arms. She found inexplicable happiness in his embrace. "Should we head back now?" Hod looked around. Everything here was finished. There was no need to stay. "Wait!" Gwen suddenly jumped down from Hod's arms. "I sense that there are many more people imprisoned down there." When she had been held captive, though she couldn't see other parts of the facility, her heightened senses and overheard conversations made it clear that she wasn't alone. As much as she wanted to stay with Hod, she couldn't ignore the others. "It seems my little Gwen has a strong sense of justice." Hod smiled, rubbing Gwen's head. Gwen was always thinking of others. That was part of her appeal. He wasn't that selfless. He had sensed the others, but it hadn't moved him much. He'd planned to have Yelena release them, but since Gwen had volunteered, he wasn't going to stop her. "Let's go, Ms. Yelena, take my Gwen to rescue them." Hod turned to Yelena. He could sense the underground passages, but he didn't want to play tour guide. Yelena was here, so he'd let her lead. "Okay." Yelena nodded. She needed to collect the remaining intel and materials. "Who are you?" Gwen, who had been so focused on Hod, now noticed Yelena. She stepped back, adopting a fighting stance, a look of distrust on her face. She remembered being mocked. "No, no, no." Yelena waved her hands. "I was undercover. That's why I arrested you." She didn't want to fight Gwen, especially with Hod around. She didn't want to get killed. Undercover or not, she valued her life. Besides, Stark was dead. She had no reason to fight Gwen. "Really?" Gwen looked at Hod inquisitively. if Yelena was undercover, she could forgive her. Yeah, she's undercover, Hod said, shrugging. Come on, I'll take you down and free them. Yelena led the way, with Hod and Gwen following behind. Hod had killed all the guards, so they walked in unopposed through the main entrance. The commotion had caused many researchers to flee, some diehard fanatics remained, but Yelena dealt with them swiftly. They're so cruel. Gwen looked at the operating rooms, disgust and nausea bubbling up inside her. The researchers hadn't fled. They were dissecting things with maniacal expressions. These were once human, though they had human skin, their hearts were monstrous. There's always a dark side to the world. That's why we need heroes like you, Hod sighed, gently patting Gwen's head. He knew that as long as there were interests and power, there would be people willing to take risks. The world would always need justice and courage. I wish everyone could live in peace. Gwen bit her lip. She had been inspired by her father to fight crime. If there were no bad guys, everyone could live without fear. It'll come. There will be such a day. Hod encouraged Gwen. The facility was designed so that no single elevator reached the lowest level. Each elevator led to a separate area, and without Yelena's high-level access, they would have been forced to fight their way through. After 3 elevators, they reached the lowest level. It was far different from Gwen's cell. There were 3 layers of steel cages. Each cage held people. Lack of space forced them to lie like dogs. In front of each row was a trough, like livestock feeding, because there was no place to relieve themselves. The stench was overwhelming. When Hod and the others entered, the prisoners didn't cheer. Instead, they stared silently, their expressions dull. They'd seen too much death and had accepted their fate as test subjects. Resistance was futile. It would only lead to beatings or being put at the front of the test subject line. They'd felt the commotion earlier, but didn't think anyone would come to save them. Constant death and sorrow had crushed their hope. They could only endure the pain in their joints. They hadn't stood upright since they were dragged out for experiments. Those moments were the closest they came to regaining their humanity. Hundreds of people were crammed in, men, women, young and old. All eyes were on Hod, Gwen, and Yelena. They wondered which of them would be selected for experiments. They're monsters. Gwen trembled, goosebumps rising on her skin. She felt the despair of these people. Humans were being treated like livestock, and sold for profit. How could anyone accept this? Had they lost all humanity? They didn't even spare the children. This is everyday life in this lab, Yelena said softly, her voice filled with helplessness. And you could just watch it happen? Hod asked, his tone a mixture of emotions. I think I'm starting to understand those superheroes a little better. I can't do anything. Yelena said, her voice strained. She'd known about this all along. She'd had the same reaction as Gwen when she first saw it, but after 3 years undercover, she was helpless. She could only watch them die, only to be replaced. They were cheap test subjects. What could she do? Help them escape? She wasn't strong enough. She was just one person. I'll go to the control room and open the cages. Yelena turned and walked toward the control room, dejected. Hod shook his head and raised his hand. Dark red energy flowed like silk threads. The threads weaved through the locks. When the energy touched them, the locks dissolved into black dust. Come out. You're safe, Gwen called out. The prisoner's eyes widened. Are we saved? Someone came for us. I want to go home. The emotions that had been suppressed for so long erupted, and their faces regained life. Fear had robbed them of hope. With these words, their hearts began to beat again. They could be human again. They climbed out, hunching over. They couldn't stand up straight, and their backs ached. I'll get things organized. I'll contact the government to take them in and get them home. If they're orphans, the government will take care of them. Yelena sighed and walked toward them. Okay, I'll leave it to you. Hod nodded. Government intervention was the best course of action. There were children here, probably orphans who'd been tricked. Help! Hod heard a faint cry coming from the depths of the cell. Someone still in there? Hod asked, confused. Everyone should have been released. I heard it too. It's coming from the back. Gwen nodded. Yelena was organizing the rescued victims. They walked toward the back. There was a separate cell, different from the others. A woman was huddled in the corner, green hair and a pale face, 17 or 18 years old. She was smaller than Gwen. Hod felt like he knew her from somewhere. Is that Polaris, Lorna? He remembered Lorna as Wanda's sister. Did he mess with her sister today? He just met Black Widow's sister, now he met Wanda's. Chapter 69. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hod never figured he'd run into Lorna here. Actually, he hadn't even considered she'd exist in this universe. Lorna, Polaris, was seriously powerful, even if she wasn't quite on her dad's level, but controlling magnetic fields. That's terrifying. Before coming to this world, he'd even daydreamed about having that power himself, controlling anything and everything with iron in it. Sweet, he could practically see Magneto ripping the iron out of someone's blood, but then again, with Ghost Spider running around, maybe nothing should surprise him. Who are you? Lorna looked up, all scared and small, hugging her knees to her chest, her eyes wide with terror, tears still glistened, and she was shaking. She probably thought they were going to drain her blood for experiments again. Hey, it's okay. We're here to rescue you. We took out all the Hydra guys. Hod lowered his voice, kept it gentle. She was super vulnerable right now. He didn't want to spook her. They're all gone. Lorna looked up, a flicker of excitement in her brown eyes. She'd thought she was stuck here, a lab rat, forever, but now, her eyes locked on Hod's face. He had a kind, handsome face. She couldn't help but think how good-looking he was. Yeah, you're safe now. Hod nodded, trying to be reassuring. She was just a kid who'd been through hell. No wonder she ended up the way she did later on. Can I leave? Lorna's eyes went wide, her voice cracking. She'd pictured this moment a million times, but it never happened. Hearing it now, her heart hammered. She was shaking. Slowly, she used the wall to pull herself up. The only thing on her mind was getting out. Yeah, we're gonna take you home. Hod opened the door, smiling at Lorna, who looked like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Locked up like that for so long, freedom must be the only thing she thought about. Home? The word seemed to deflate her. I don't have a home anymore. The hope drained out of her, replaced by a crushing sadness. Pain shot through her. Even if she got out of here, she had nowhere to go. Where could she go? It'd just be trading one cage for another. Hod. Gwen tugged at his sleeve, whispering, she's so messed up. She could feel Lorna's pain. Sure, she had her mom, Helen, but her dad was in a coma, which really got to her, but Lorna didn't even have that. Yeah. Hod just nodded. He was already trying to figure out what to do with her. He couldn't just dump Lorna on Yelena. If her powers came out, it'd be all over for her. The suits upstairs would never let that kind of power go, so, no way was he handing her over to Yelena. Hod, what if we took her home with us? Gwen hesitated, then grabbed his hand, giving him the puppy dog eyes. Her family couldn't swing another mouth to feed, but Hod was different. He had that huge mansion, and tons of empty rooms. It wouldn't even make a dent. Besides, he had more than enough to take care of another person. Me? Lorna looked up, her eyes all shiny with tears, staring at them like they were crazy. She couldn't believe someone would even consider adopting her. She was 16, after all. Most people would figure she could fend for herself. Hod hadn't expected Gwen to say that. He'd even been thinking about how to introduce Lorna to Wanda, her half-sister. If they came back to his place, they could look out for each other. But he was having trouble figuring out how to even bring it up to Gwen. He couldn't just say, hey, I'm bringing home another girl. But if Gwen was pushing for it, that changed everything. If he could, he'd say yes in a heartbeat. Wanda would be stoked. Click, click, someone was running up behind them. Yelena came hustling up. I contacted my people. They're sending a cleanup crew ASAP. We gotta get out of here. Yelena figured Hod didn't want to get made, otherwise, she would have heard of him, and if the higher-ups showed up, things could get messy. Okay, let's go. Hod nodded, gently helping Lorna up. Come on, I'll take you home. He had to do it now. He could feel how light she was, like she was way too skinny for an adult. Okay. Lorna didn't know him, but she trusted him. It was hard to explain, but she knew he wouldn't lie to her. But as soon as she took a step, her legs buckled, and she almost fell. Hod saw it right away. She was malnourished, and with them draining her blood all the time, she could barely stand. He didn't hesitate, just scooped her up in his arms. Let's go. Time to bail. That he opened a portal. As he stepped through with Gwen, the system chimed in, ding. You made Baron Strucker pay for his crimes and saved all the poor souls in the lab. Get reward, magnetic field control. Magnetic field control. Hod was stunned. He didn't expect to get that. Lorna's and Magneto's powers, the movies played it down, but that was seriously awesome power. But he couldn't focus on that, not with Lorna in his arms. In just a minute, she'd fallen asleep. She must have been exhausted and starving after being locked up underground for so long. Those science nut jobs were probably sucking her dry, and food. Forget about it. If they could barely keep her alive, that's about it. If Lorna hadn't had her magnetic field, she'd be just like those other guys in the cages. She'd finally let her guard down, and she crashed immediately. Poor kid, Gwen said softly. She was about the same age, but Lorna was just broken. She'd been jealous at first, but seeing her like this, it just went away. She was just too beat to be a threat, and that made her think even better of Hod. He'd said yes to her request without even thinking about it. At least this girl had a family now. Imelda. Back at the mansion, Hod laid Lorna in the guest room and called Imelda over. Take good care of this girl. Whatever she needs, make sure she gets it. Of course, sir. Imelda nodded. Gwen, I'll take you home. Hod turned to Gwen, taking her hand. You sure? Gotta go now. Gwen was bummed. They'd barely gotten to hang out. Your folks are probably freaking out. They're probably out looking for Gwen everywhere. He wasn't going to keep her away from her family just because he wanted to hang out. Besides, they could always get together later. Oh man, I forgot. Gwen smacked herself on the forehead. Her parents were waiting for her to come home. They must be worried sick. Hod walked her out to Bumblebee and hauled tail for Queens. Still no word on Gwen. Helen wiped her eyes with a tissue, her eyes bloodshot. She'd been looking all day, but nothing. It was like she just vanished. They'd checked the cameras, but the last time they saw her was that guy from the train station. Then the cameras glitched, and everything was gone. We're doing everything we can. We'll hear something soon. George sighed, taking a drag on his cigarette. The ashtray was overflowing with butts. He didn't say much, just kept sighing. He wondered if this was his fault. He was a cop. He'd put a lot of bad guys away. If someone wanted to hit him where it hurt, his daughter could be in serious danger. I told you, you shouldn't be in that line of work. If my daughter is gone. Helen started crying again. She couldn't imagine what Gwen was going through. She'd said it before, being a cop was too dangerous. Gwen was so sweet, she wouldn't ever cause any trouble. She was so helpless. A little girl. Mom, Dad. A voice came from the door. They looked up, seeing Gwen standing there, their eyes going wide. You're home. Are you okay? Where were you last night? Helen rushed over, grabbing Gwen's hands, checking her over. George, who wasn't good with emotions, had tears in his eyes, but he couldn't say a word. Were you hurt? George stepped forward, his voice thick. He knew she hadn't just stayed out all night. Those security cameras went down way too fast. Someone had planned this. I ran into some human traffickers yesterday. That's what Hod had told her to say. They couldn't just say she stayed at a friend's house. George would check the cameras. Human traffickers. George's heart skipped a beat. How did you get away? That he knew how messed up the world could be. Those guys would do anything to grab girls, and once they had them, it was a nightmare. They'd probably never get out. They might end up as spare parts. Mr. Hod saved me. Gwen looked at Hod, then explained, Mr. Hod pulled some strings to get me out. She knew she'd have to introduce Hod to her parents sooner or later, and George would definitely run a background check, so it was best to just be straight with them, and Hod did rescue her. The Stasis turned to Hod, realizing who he was. It's you. Helen's eyes widened. Even though he was dead serious this morning, she hadn't believed him. Sure, George woke up, but she didn't think Hod did anything. Thank you so much. George grabbed Hod's hand. He was just a kid, but he saved his daughter. It was nothing. I'm Gwen's friend, it's what I had to do. Hod smiled. I was planning on dropping by anyway. Oh. You left these here. Helen remembered the 2 gifts he had brought. It's from China, something special for you both. Hod smiled. Thank you. Come on in, I'll cook something. Helen realized this could be Gwen's boyfriend, otherwise, he wouldn't go to so much trouble. Come on in. George invited Hod to sit down. Sit tight, I'll call the station. He had to let them know they could call off the search. Hod sat on the couch, and Helen started cooking. She wouldn't let Hod help. The kitchen was too small, she said. George liked this Hod kid more and more. He was good looking, he seemed to have a good family, and he really cared about his daughter. At the table, the Stasis kept filling Hod's plate. They knew how Gwen felt about Hod, they just smiled and kept quiet. I should get going. Thanks for dinner. After the meal, Hod said his goodbyes. I'll walk him out. Gwen ran after him. I gotta go. As Hod opened the car door, Gwen pulled him close, she kissed him, the smell of her perfume filled his senses, they forgot everything and just held each other. Hod, a familiar voice broke them apart. He turned and saw a figure in red standing under the streetlight. She looked shocked. Chapter 70. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You. Wanda froze, stunned by what she just witnessed. The man she loved was making out with someone else, right out in the open. Her heart twisted so hard she could barely breathe, eyes burning, body trembling. She just stared. She wanted to scream, but only sobs escaped her throat. She'd worried Hood might leave her, but not like this, not so fast. It was too much to process. Was I dumped? She was here because she'd wrapped up her stuff at the Avengers compound. She'd wanted to call Hood, but decided to surprise him, heading straight to his place, only to find out he'd taken Gwen out. Figuring Gwen lived in Queens, Wanda had come looking. Now this, she gasped, tears streaming down her face. Wanda, let me explain. Hood spoke quickly, realizing how bad this looked. He'd planned to break the news after things were more serious. I went to your place, couldn't find you. Wanda looked stricken, her voice cracking. She fought to stay calm, glaring at Hood. This was happening. Nothing could change it. Deep down, she'd suspected something, but refused to face it until now. Like the time she'd heard a girl's voice at Hood's house, she'd chosen to believe his lies, not digging deeper, or when they were shopping, and he seemed off. She'd pretended not to notice, scared to find out the truth. Even smelling Gwen's perfume on him after the snake incident, she told herself she was being paranoid, but seeing this, it was too much. Hood gritted his teeth, his mind racing for something to say, but the damage was done. Explanations would ring hollow. Buzz. Wanda clenched her fists, jaw tight. The nearby trees and grass seemed to writhe. Even the evening breeze picked up, swirling around them. Leaves scattered, forming a barrier between them. They just stared at each other from across the divide. You two? That even Gwen could see something was seriously wrong. They were more than just friends, that was obvious. She'd never considered it before, but now she realized she was probably the other woman. Why else would Wanda be staying at Hood's place when she could live at the Avengers compound? Even asking Hood to grab her clothes. I'm fine. Wanda's face went blank, a crimson aura surrounding her. Extreme pain triggers defense mechanisms. The next moment, she shot into the sky with terrifying speed. She should have known someone like Hood wouldn't settle for just one person, and really, what grounds did she have to object? Their relationship had always been undefined. She just refused to admit it. Now, seeing this, she accepted her fate. Maybe she wasn't meant to be loved, maybe it was all in her head. Sorry, Gwen. Hood grabbed Gwen's shoulders. This is complicated. I'll explain later. Then he rocketed into the sky, chasing after Wanda. He had to keep an eye on her. God knows what she might do. He knew how fragile she was. Whoosh. Wanda sensed the magical energy behind her, a fierce determination hardening her gaze. The crimson glow intensified, accelerating her. She became a meteor, streaking across the sky with a brilliant red trail. Mom! Look! A shooting star. A little girl in a windbreaker pointed upward. Two of them, actually. Make a wish, quick, it might come true. Her mother looked up, spotting the crimson flash cutting through the darkening sky. As the sun set, two bright meteors, one scarlet, one dark red, blazed overhead. Passers-by stopped, drawn by the light. They gazed up, closing their eyes and making wishes. They'd never seen two shooting stars at once. Many grabbed their phones, capturing the rare sight, way up high, outside the city. Wanda. Wait, Hood strained to catch up, grabbing Wanda's hand. He'd grown fond of her these past few weeks. Even if she was a bit proud, she was always agreeable. He'd seen her softer side, and he wasn't ready to lose that. Let go. Wanda shook off Hood's hand, red light flaring in her eyes. Her beautiful face now held a dangerous edge. Buzz. Crimson energy enveloped Hood in an instant. The dazzling light was like a fiery, mesmerizing display in the night sky. Listen to me, Hood raised his hand, the phoenix force materializing as a shield. He could feel Wanda's rage, the crimson energy wrapped around him, tightening like a python. The phoenix force shield began to crack. I don't want your excuses. You damn liar. Wanda inhaled sharply and yanked with her hand. Hood flew through the air like a bowling ball, slamming into the ground. Bang. Dust exploded upward, even the earth trembled. She felt a pang as Hood went down, but he could handle it. Sure enough, he rose again. I said leave me alone. Wanda's crimson aura blazed again, violent rays of light flashing in the sky. The concentrated energy slammed into Hood's shield, causing more cracks to spread. Wanda, I know you're pissed, but I'm a man. What can I do? Hood yelled, gritting his teeth. Wanda, momentarily worried, became furious again. The guy was still trying to have it both ways. She poured more chaos magic into the attack, forcing Hood's phoenix force shield down into the hillside. That girl is seriously ticked off. Hood lay on the ground, feeling the crimson energy battering his phoenix force shield. He shook his head. He hadn't expected Wanda to track him down, and to walk in on that of all things, leaving him speechless. He could feel the crimson energy she was using now was stronger than when she fought Agatha. Phew. Wanda cut off the crimson glow, gasping for breath. Her blood was boiling. She was torn. She wanted to ditch Hood without a second thought, but then she remembered how good he'd been to her, and her heart ached, but thinking of things always being like this. She couldn't stand it. Wanda, I really don't have a choice. The physical fitness of the people in our family is obvious. Hood flashed to her side. Honestly, the system's rewards had really made him amazing. You are really shameless. Wanda's hand glowed crimson as she slapped Hood in the stomach, but at the last moment, seeing he wasn't dodging, she instinctively pulled back her power. Bang! Her hand connected, and Hood dropped like a stone. Boom! Dust erupted, swallowing Hood below. Why didn't he even try to block? Wanda frowned, biting her lip. She'd held back, not using her full strength. Hood was as strong as vibranium. A fall like that shouldn't be a problem. Don't play dead, get up, Wanda yelled, but there was no response. Is he dead? The thought hit her like a punch to the gut. If Hood's abilities relied on actively using his power, then he really could be in trouble. She couldn't sense any sign of life below. Hood, her heart leaped into her throat. She dove down. She didn't like being lied to, but she didn't want him hurt. If something happened, she'd never forgive herself. As she neared the ground, she whipped up a gust of wind, clearing the dust. Hood lay still, unmoving, his chest not rising or falling. He was dead. Hood, Wanda's face drained of color, and she threw herself onto his body. She couldn't feel him breathing. Panic seized her. She pressed her ear to his chest, trying to hear a heartbeat. Suddenly, Hood moved, wrapping her in a tight hug. You tricked me again. Wanda tried to pull away, but her limbs felt weak. Tears streamed down her face as she closed her eyes. After a moment, Hood released her. You were faking. Wanda's anger had faded. She slapped Hood's chest, not very hard. That actually hurt. I really feel like in pain. Hood clutched his stomach, looking at Wanda with a pained expression. I can hurt you. Wanda didn't believe it. She knew Hood's constitution better than anyone. He was as tough as nails, and she barely touched him. If you don't believe me, feel for yourself. Hood made a painful face, looking like he was trembling all over. Wanda, worried his expression was genuine, reached out and poked his abdomen tentatively. Here. You're not mad anymore, Hood grinned, relieved. Liar, Wanda huffed, but the tension in her chest eased. Actually, I really do love you, but... Hood pulled Wanda close, looking at her sincerely. I'm sorry, but I can't give up Gwen. Wanda bit her lip, fighting an internal battle. But every time she looked at Hood's face, her heart softened. Finally, she whispered, I don't care, just promise you'll never dump me. She knew she couldn't leave Hood. She'd just have to accept her fate. Hopefully, he wouldn't abandon her. Don't worry, I swear to God, Hood grinned, raising his hand to swear. Okay, you don't need to swear, I believe you. Wanda grabbed his hand, pouting. The moonlight bathed them as they flew over a strait. Beautiful here, right? Amazing views and no one around for miles. Hood's suggestive tone made Wanda blush. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, New York, two lithe figures were locked in combat. The impact of their blows echoed through the streets. Finally, they kicked off each other simultaneously, creating some distance. Yelena, what are you doing in New York? Natasha glared at the familiar figure before her, her sister. She'd received a tip that Yelena was in Manhattan, that's why she rushed to intercept her. I'm a law-abiding citizen, here legally. Yelena spread her hands, shrugging. And is that how you treat tourists who come to New York? I don't trust anything a spy says. Natasha knew her sister. She wouldn't be here without a reason. If there wasn't a conspiracy, something was off. Looking for someone. Yelena smirked, raising her eyebrows suggestively. After returning to the organization yesterday, she was ordered to investigate Hood. Even before S.H.I.E.L.D., Natasha and S.H.I.E.L.D. clearly didn't know Hood's true identity. She could get the upper hand by figuring out Hood's identity first. Getting closer to Hood would be a major win for the organization. Who? Natasha asked, frowning warily. Yelena shrugged, saying provocatively, guess.